this week's episode, we discuss whipping llamas.
What? What, Jill?
LOL. Well, we're talking about Winamp is back and making some waves. You remember Winamp's slogan?
Oh, okay, yeah.
I don't remember that at all.
I'll tell you after, because it's not like we don't want to have at the beginning of our show on YouTube saying that in the slogan. So let's leave it there, and the listeners and also Ryan can Google it to find out what it is.
No, I DuckDuckGo it, Michael.
Sure, that would probably work too. Yeah.
Boom.
Ryan, that's sacrilege. You don't know what it means.
I don't. I know Winamp, but I don't know what whipping llamas has to do with Winamp. So.
Okay. So we're also going to talk about some sketchy news from Microsoft, and we got some great community feedback this week about snaps. Welcome to Destination Linux, your favorite video podcast. My name is Jill.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Ryan.
Plus, we got some Linux gaming and our software spotlight and more. Now, let's get the show on the road toward Destination Linux.
Our feedback this week comes from Phil. We got another Phil. It could be the same Phil.
What is it, Dr. Phil, or is it just someone who is also a doctor?
I mean, how many Phils are there? It's definitely Dr. Phil.
Again. Okay. Yeah. It's the same Dr. Phil that was last week. Yes.
Yeah. Dr. Phil. I wish I could do a good Dr. Phil impersonation because his voice is very distinct for this part.
I wish I had thought of this beforehand and tried to learn it, but maybe we could just have Wendy play a clip.
You know what this situation needs is a hero.
Maybe this Phil is a philanthropist.
Oh, gosh. Jill. Philanthropist. Oh, my gosh. Michael, you've spread like the flu on this show. Like, literally, the dad jokes. They're so bad.
So, I mean, that was a good one. I like it. And also, by the way, you know what you'd call Dr. Phil if he went to the Jurassic period?
Huh?
A Philosopher.
Yes.
All right. Phil goes on to say, I love the show. I don't know why, Phil, honestly. You probably not after you see that intro into your feedback.
They're like, I regret telling them my name.
I'm a longtime listener and fan. With regards to Snap's backend not being entirely open source. So on a previous episode, we talked about this, we talked about the common community complaints about Snaps, because there's a lot of vitriol out there when it comes to Snaps. So one of those things, of course, is not open sourcing the back end, which we actually, out of all the different community things that we were going through, was one that we agreed with. They should open source it. He says, I may be mistaken, but I remember reading somewhere that one of the original reasons for this was to attract proprietary software vendors that wouldn't ordinarily consider releasing software on Linux. Canonical already has a good working relationship with many of these companies and are trusted. The likes of Microsoft, Adobe, and others may be reluctant to post their software to a standard repository. The fact that few have actually made a Linux version is another story.
So that's interesting.
Yeah. Take.
Yeah.
It's interesting, but also I think the posting it to a repository is more complicated than because in order to get into a typical traditional repository, you have to get the distribution maintainers to push it in, and most of them would not do it. So in that sense, I think that Snaps does have a push or a play anyway towards making it a viable place for proprietary software to be, just like the Flatpak does, because you can also do it in the Flatpak. But I don't know if that has anything to do with the server itself.
How would that keep you from serving up the software? Like the software could still be closed source. Let's say, Adobe made Photoshop, kept it closed source, but brought it so that it works on Linux, and then served it through the Snap Store, which would be open source. That doesn't mean Adobe software itself would suddenly be open source just because they're serving it on an open source.
Right. They
server.
Could just, I mean, the part about the proprietary server doesn't really work in this case because you could do that whether it's open or not. And the companies probably don't care about that particular portion as far as a reason to do it.
Yeah. He goes on to say, Canonical's work brings Flutter to Linux is another example of this kind of thing. They have wanted to make Linux a viable platform for developers of all kinds for some time now. Software availability can be a hindering force for any platform or OS. True Excel power users will explain that there is no stand-in replacement. Talking about Microsoft Excel, by the way. A lot of professional designers will argue that open source alternatives still have a ways to go. I think few people actually love Windows. They use it because it is the most complete OS in terms of software options. Well, we're going to give you more reasons not to love Windows here in a little bit.
And also reasons to not use it. That's going to come up later in the show. But I think that this is true, sure. Like the replacements for the particular pieces of software is very hard in certain cases. For example, Adobe Photoshop, it's very hard to replace it. There are some alternatives that are decent, but they're not open source. None of the open source options are really anywhere near. Krita is actually a lot closer than you would expect it to be, considering it's not made for that purpose, but it is still pretty good. GIMP is light years away, not even in the equation. And with like Excel, there are a lot of cool things you can do with like Google Sheets or just LibreOffice spreadsheets. But of course, I mean, there's the compatibility aspect of Excel, but there's also like a lot of features that Excel can do that others can't really do. And as a person who's got into spreadsheets and the fairly recent thing,
man, KDE and spreadsheets. That you need a shirt that just says KDE and spreadsheets, my true love, or something like that.
There we go.
Excel is very, very powerful. It's probably one of Microsoft's greatest tools. I think if I wanted to give an example of something Microsoft does well, Excel would definitely be.
You're saying they excel at spreadsheets?
Yeah, they excel at spreadsheets. Excel's fantastic. It really is good software, and it's kind of an industry standard. So you're not going to go to many workplaces and not have big companies, let me say, and not have Excel experience kind of required or used at some point. Yeah. So
the point about the complete OS part with, I mean, it's not, there's really no such thing as that. But at the same time, is like saying the main reason, I 100% agree, it's very few people who actually love Windows. Those people do exist. They even make podcasts about it, but there's not a lot of them. Majority of the people who use Windows are because they have to, whether that's because they're forced to because of a company that they work for, or it's because they need a particular piece of software. But I do think the only value that Windows has is the fact that it has these apps. And that's only because they've been so dominant for so long. And like, it's not because it's a good OS.
Well, I think about Android and iOS here. At some points during the years of the cell phone market, there were other competitors in there. Android and iOS did it better. Generally, Android had the features way before iOS. But the other competitors all failed because they couldn't get the developers to create all their apps. Once the app store started crossing like thousands and thousands of apps, it was very difficult to keep getting the developers to keep creating for other platforms. And so now we're stuck with two platforms, which I would venture to say most people at this juncture are not very excited for their, I don't care if you're iOS or Android, for these phone operating systems. You just use them, one of them, because of the apps it has or the features or usability.
You just need to get whatever you need to do.
They're just boring. They're boring now. They used to be exciting. Like every time Android had a new candy named release, it was super exciting to see what was going to be in there. Now,
point, I don't even know if they still do that release structure of like.
That's how boring it is. Games. Nobody even cares.
No one cares. I remember back in the day we had like Cupcake came out.
Cupcake
was a huge
was one
thing.
Of the best.
And then there was like they had a Kit Kat actual like licensing thing for the code name. Like what now? Who cares?
Like,
who cares at all? Yeah. But I will say that the other platforms, most of them were just not properly done. They started too late, or they started like, for example, Microsoft doing their attempt. They waited way too long, or BlackBerry's attempt, which was also way too long. And then there was the worst one, the biggest offender, because it had so much potential, was WebOS from Palm.
Yeah,
they just fumbled it so hard. In my opinion, it's like they could have done it, but they fumbled so hard. It was so sad.
I think about Brandon on our trip, Michael, to the Red Hat Summit. He pulls out a Microsoft Surface phone. What did they call it? I don't think they called it a Surface phone.
It was the Surface Duo or something like that.
Surface Duo.
They literally had marketing as saying, "Don't call it a phone."
Right. That was their attempt to be like, hey, we're not trying to enter the phone market, but it is a phone, but don't call it that, which was so stupid because
the dumbest possible way you could market that.
Even now, all this time later, like comparing it to my Google Pixel Fold, it was actually, I was like, I kind of like his better. It looked better. The screen was really nice. It was thin. It was really neat.
Cool.
So they missed
he pulled it out and we were like, wait, what is that thing? And and we got the story about it, and also the fact that they marketed it as not a phone.
Good job, Microsoft. Nailed it.
So Phil goes on to say, and I quote, I may be wrong, because I would never say that, obviously. I'm usually right. But it is rather interesting thing to consider. We will always have the hardcore open source only members of our community. That's very true. That is totally fine. The nice thing about Linux is not that nobody is forcing this down your throat. Simply don't use it. Be happy for those who need it. From my experience, most developers, IT professionals, and practical technologists are a lot less opinionated in this regard. I love open source, but I also understand that you need to use the technology that will best help you get the job done. If you need something to work and its failure could mean serious consequences for your job, it is best to not hack something together. Always a pleasure. Keep being the best Linux podcast on the internet.
Look at that, Jill. He called us the
thank
best.
you, Phil.
And I agree with Phil. I think Phil's right
completely.
here.
Yeah,
Phil,
that was excellent. I
100%
love how you
correct.
wrote that last paragraph.
Well, the last sentence.
Just the last sentence. Yeah, the last sentence.
The last paragraph is good. Don't get me wrong. But that last sentence, perfection. So I don't know, Michael. One of the things I would take a little bit of issue with is hacking something together. And I don't think Phil was saying this, but it just open source. Like when you look at certain open source programs, they are the standard, right? If you look at Blender, for instance, this is the standard. So I think that, open source, there are situations, definitely, even in my current situation going back to college, where it's like requirement, have to have Office 365. And the risk of sending in a paper that you've worked really hard on and the formatting shifts just enough, because you know how these APA style references are, things between you using a different program, even Google Docs or only Office or whatever, LibreOffice, and Word, when they open Word and try to retranslate it, can create a mess. So there's some times where you're just going to have to use the solution you don't want to have to use. And I think what Phil's saying is that's okay. And there's some people who refuse to ever do that. And there's some people who are just like, look, I got to get the job done, or I want to make sure that I get an A, right, on my paper that I send in. So overall, I hear Phil's point. I think we kind of busted the little Snap backend piece because Canonical has not really given us a good excuse for this. I've heard many different ones, even from Canonical employees, and none of them really hold any weight.
Well, the one of them about it's a lot of effort to do that. I could see how that would be like.
You're an open source company.
Okay, that's not a great reason, but it is a reason, and at least it's a reason that has some legitimacy to it. Whether it's a great reason or not, that's up for debate, and probably not. But I do think that there's some interesting points about what you're saying. I think that open source is great and wonderful, and I think that it's the best philosophy for approaching it to create something new, especially now. But I do think that there are arguments that not everything can be made open source, whether that's because what you're working on, the company doesn't want to support something to a massive level like that. Because if you're going to open source it, then anybody can take it and code it, and then they have to do bug triage and all that sort of stuff. Maybe they don't want to do all that sort of stuff. So maybe, I'm not saying that that's the server or the Canonical thing, but just there are reasons. And I do think that what Phil was saying is very true. A lot of people, professionals and practical technologists is a good way to say it, are people who are not necessarily going to require it be open source. I would say that I prefer to look for open source if I can, and I will always test the open source option. But if there's a proprietary option that is miles beyond what it was, the options in terms of proprietary versus open, if the proprietary is that good, I'll use it.
Jill, what do you think on this whole situation? Should Canonical open source the back end? I mean, they'll listen to you.
Yeah.
Boom.
I think definitely, especially what's going on with the Flatpak community and how successful that has been, and it's open, and they have the verified applications, and I know Canonical is working more and more on verification and whatnot. But
Canonical, shut up the naysayers, open source it, and then we can put this to rest and move on. If you want to send in your comments to the best Linux podcast on the internet, and we didn't say that. Phil said, Dr. Phil said,
said that. Yes.
That's so sweet.
Dr. Phil said that.
You can send in your comments to destinationlinux.net/comments. We'd love to hear from you and get you thinking like Phil got us thinking about these different things. Just because we don't agree with everything doesn't mean we don't love the thought-provoking questions and thoughts in there. We appreciate you sending it in so much.
Very much. This episode of Destination Linux is sponsored by LINBIT. LINBIT has been keeping digital businesses running for over 20 years. They're the makers of open source products like DRBD, which is high availability software that has been part of the Linux kernel since 2010, and LinStore, industry-leading open source software-defined storage. LINBIT has an active presence in the open source community, and they collaborate with the community to help identify and build new features. LINBIT provides enterprise-grade software that runs on a variety of platforms and OSs without vendor lock-in. What that means is that you could use the software on any platform, including specific hardware that you want to use, or just off-the-shelf hardware that you get and connect it. All of this stuff can be interchanged really easily. And with DRBD and LinStore, you can have high-speed replicated block storage in almost any configuration, whether it's Kubernetes, Apache Cloud, or OpenNebula. There's even DRBD proxy for long-distance replication. LINBIT is run by its founders to this day, and all of its engineers and developers are in-house with offices in Europe and North America, which allows them to have global 24/7 support to complement their enterprise offerings. Visit linbit.com to learn more about the people behind LINBIT and the awesome software for block storage, duplication, and more. Remember what it was like back in the early 2000s? I mean,
Yes.
I remember.
Just
it was
like
not
yesterday.
great when it comes to computers. And that, I mean, it was fun in the nostalgic part of it, but
It was way funner in computers in 2000 than it is today, I think. Maybe not in Linux, but
I mean,
just computers in general.
I don't know if that's true. We'd have to discuss this in a longer period.
I mean,
There
you
was-
had the
were a
colorful
lot more
pipe
variety.
screensaver in
Yes,
Windows.
there was the really colorful, like the pipes where it made
That
you think
alone.
that you were, or also the pipes that made it look like a just Super Mario Brothers going everywhere. Someone made a
CDs with
a
wings,
modified version and stuff. Yeah.
or is that just DVD
no, that's
player?
the toaster with wings.
The toaster with
with
wings.
wings. Yeah,
but
that
there
was-
were
yeah.
CDs with wings too.
That was in movies.
I don't remember that at all.
Yeah.
The
And-
Cartoon
and the-
Network was still good.
and the sheep.
Yeah, Cartoon Network was good back in 2000s, man. That's right. That's
That's
absolutely
true.
right.
It's
You
true.
could get all your favorite songs on LimeWire.
Well, I mean, also with viruses too.
Yeah, lots of viruses, but you could still get that song, you know? And there were way better songs back then too. Like, I mean, we have mumble rap today. What are we doing, people?
I mean, we do have mumble rap, but also this is actually like a little bit of a thing for me in terms of like music genres and people who say like, my generation of music was the best.
They were right.
They were all terrible at all times. There's always at least a giant chunk where you can say this is this genre or this part of the music of this decade, and you could just give examples of just trash music.
I agree with you,
There's always
but-
something like that.
but this generation, like, I think
Mumble
if
rap
you followed
is an
it,
insult to music.
60s, best music. 80s, fantastic music, but not as good as the 60s. 90s, great music, but not as good as the 60s
Why'd you
and
skip
80s.
the 70s?
Like, every time the music,
Why'd you skip the 70s?
I don't remember. The point is,
Because you don't like disco?
shut up, Michael. My point is that if you follow it along, they're right. Every generation's music is progressively worse than where we started. Like, it just keeps getting worse. At a certain point, it was it was great, and then it just keeps getting worse now.
I disagree because we have like certain stuff that was, in the 30s and 20s, the music was very different than the 60s. And I think there was a big jump and that was better, like when jazz was
that's what I'm
introduced and
saying.
stuff like
at a
that,
certain- All through history, music was getting better and more sophisticated. All the way up to about the 60s when it was good, it kept going, and now it's just progressively gotten worse. Like, we're going back. Pretty soon.
70s and
wholeheartedly.
80s, there was a revolution in music of all kinds of new genres. You had new wave, you had disco, you had EDM. It was birthed a lot of
Our
music
current
that we all
trajectory
love.
with music is we're going to be back to somebody just banging sticks on a cave wall. And they're going to be like, this is my new song. Like, we're on that trajectory where we're going completely back.
Okay.
Now people just
we're all,
mumbling on a track.
we're all making fair points, but just to be clear to everyone who's watching and listening going, Why are you talking about Winamp is doing some stuff with their source
Oh
code.
yeah, that's what we're
That's why we're talking about music. And for those who, back in the 2000s or the 90s, Winamp was a big deal. That's why we're talking about. Okay, now you know it. And I will agree, Ryan, that there are some times where music got better and got worse, and mumble rap is a travesty to all of music. I will agree with that.
Thank you.
But let's talk about the reason we're actually discussing music on this show, and that is the program Winamp.
Yes.
Winamp is something that brings back memories, of just great times of using a computer. And specifically, Michael, this is going to shock you. I like to customize my Winamp with skins.
Nice, Ryan. I'm proud.
That shocks me only a little, because I think that you were a teenager and you haven't really fully developed into Ryan yet. And and then once you did, then you're like, okay, I don't care about this.
So
laziness.
So Winamp was the end of your experimentation on customization.
Yeah. Once Winamp went away, I got lazy and I'm like, I'm just leaving it all default. I don't care.
It probably was. But also it was like in the process of Winamp, you just download a skin and load it, and that's all you had to do. It's probably, you were like, okay, I could do that basic.
I thought I was a hacker though. I'm like, look, my Winamp's cool. Like, it makes different waveforms and has different skin, when it plays music.
Yeah.
Felt awesome.
Sure.
It was like psychedelic to listen to music because it would create all kinds of different
waveforms
and things as different music you were playing. It was a really cool tool. And I miss it. I miss it like I miss Clippy,
Yeah, me
it was
too.
great. Clippy was amazing.
Well, Winamp was made in the 90s, and now it's sort of back, kind of.
Nice.
Yeah.
They've been doing a lot of changes between who runs it, and now there's the Llama group that runs it. And so we're talking about the what's happening and the changes around the source code for Winamp, because there are some talks about open sourcing Winamp, which is something that they would have benefited from decades ago. But now, so if you weren't around during these days and you miss the awesomeness that is Winamp, well, sorry, just you've missed it. It was great.
It's gone. We had cool stuff. We had CDs that had like pictures in them and the lyrics and stuff that you could physically hold.
We actually knew what was on the CDs. We knew what tracks were in what album. It wasn't just random slew of songs from an artist that you have no idea what album is, because there's no way you're actually going to click on the album and look at the track list, because no one cares anymore. We actually had discs that had jewel cases that had everything on it, and you could flip it on the back and you could see it. You could even burn your own discs and make your own albums. I mean, so
Give
much
them
cool
to your
stuff.
girlfriend. You tell her all the love songs that made you think of her. Like, it was amazing.
The mix CD.
We had a nice CD booklet, which of course, those of us who were into vinyl were a little saddened by the size when it shrunk, not having this beautiful vinyl trifold.
Yeah. I mean,
we had
again, it's progressively gotten worse. Now you have no inserts, you have no art, you have no nothing. You have nothing.
Yeah.
But Winamp is making a comeback, Michael. It's going to change the music player game forever.
Okay, let's be more clear. It's attempting to make a comeback.
It may be 20 years too late, but
because we got a lot of young listeners not going to understand this. Winamp was big enough that it was acquired by AOL for $100 million.
Yeah.
Okay? They bought Winamp for $100 million in 1999. So imagine someone paying that for a media player today. Like, that's insane, but that's how
they were
much
dominating.
It dominated the industry. So it was a big deal. It was very cool and fun to play with. And then AOL got a hold of it and ruined the whole thing. So, but now it's owned by a company and they're open sourcing it. And I think open source breathes new life into projects, and Winamp could now be a thing that we use on Linux.
Yes.
Possible. Because we have a lot of media players in Linux, like a lot. There's a lot of them.
We need another one, obviously. We have a shortage.
I
We
think
don't
Winamp
have one that's highly customizable, though.
as highly
I mean,
customizable as
we
Winamp was.
We
yeah,
do.
not as Winamp. We do have some that you can add skins and themes on, which I'm going to talk about in a bit. But
I mean, we do though, because we'll get to that later.
yeah,
But it is cool that they're trying to do this with Winamp, because it is one of those brands that you hear about it and go, oh yeah, that was a thing, wasn't it? So it's really cool that they're doing it. And we haven't heard about this project in who knows. So even just the nostalgia of it is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But it might be, what do you think? Is it too little too late to bring back Winamp?
I don't think you're ever going to make it. It would be hard to make it as popular as it ever was, because people's
Yeah.
listening is now Spotify, YouTube. I'm not saying everyone, because people are going to be like, nah, I've got a jillion songs downloaded on a server and I play it through Plex and all that. I know everyone has like a different thing, but I'm just saying, as a whole, I think most people, percentage wise, have probably moved to a streaming service or on their way to moving to a streaming service.
Yeah.
Due to the convenience. I think it's going to be very hard for a media player like Winamp to have the impact it had when we didn't have that as an option. If you wanted to stream or even download a song online back then, you're going to wait 15 minutes per song. Internet was slow. It was slow. So I think
the wonders
awesome.
of the 2000s era of computing, Ryan. Like you were
Listen,
and also it took an hour to download a single song.
It's too easy nowadays. It's too easy for you kids. In my day, we had to walk up
Back in my day,
work hard.
Barefoot,
Back in my day, we had to walk up hills down to get our terabytes.
That's right. But I think that it still is it could bring life to it, and that somebody could fork it and turn it into something really cool. Because recently I uncovered an old archive of music files when I was cleaning up some of my old server files, and I just forgot that I had this huge load of music that I acquired legally over the years. And shut up, Michael. It was legal. And it did make me kind of miss having a steady collection of Ryan's favorites. You want to know what's included in Ryan's favorites, Michael?
What's that?
Well,
Barbie Girl from Aqua?
That would definitely be on the list. I mean, that song was awesome.
Classic.
But Disturbed, 9 Inch Nails, K's Choice.
Never heard of it.
Depeche Mode.
I know that one.
Negative.
Yep, sure.
Metallica, Korn.
Sure.
I mean, these are classic family-friendly.
100% family-friendly. Never heard of K's Choice, though. But the rest I know. And those are some good ones. And it's funny. I realized that, people's opinions of music change seldom. Some people have this genre that they like at this era and it's typically when they're growing up, right? They like this particular style of music. And I'm not that way. My tastes change quite a bit. And, it could be rap some days, EDM some days, metal
mumble
some
rap.
days. Never mumble rap, never. No, I could. I listened to one song from that. I could not
dancing.
take it.
Best of Tap Dancing 2022.
That's not music, but it is entertaining. There is a lot of skill to that.
There's a tap dancer listening in our audience that just spit their coffee all over the radio when you said that.
There's no music to tap dancing. You could tap dance to anything. What are you talking about?
That is, listen, I apologize on behalf of all tap dancers.
Okay, hold on a second. Is there really specific music for tap dancing?
I mean, the tap dancing is the music. It's click, 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 click. That's the song.
Oh, okay.
Clicking.
Fair enough. Okay, fair enough. Sure. Anyway.
Click, click, click.
Click, 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 click. Okay. So anyway, back on the sort of subject that I was trying to say, I think, was that I noticed that I like this sort of use of like these streaming services like Spotify because I change what I want to listen to all the time. And I stopped listening to Spotify when I switched to Tidal a few years ago. And then Tidal decided to do things that were annoying. And also break and not play the full song sometimes. So I went back to Spotify and I had a huge list of stuff I used to listen to like 6 or 7 years prior. And then I realized like 50% of those songs I don't want to listen to anymore. And it was just kind of funny because I had to delist stuff I had starred on my playlist and stuff like that. And I feel like the only thing that I'm missing is like there's a few small things you can't get in streaming services that I wish I could. That if I could combine maybe 5-10 songs on a local player with Spotify or something like that streaming, that would be great. So if Winamp could bring together a combination of those things, then I'd be happy.
If they could figure out a way to make your music collection fun again, and streamable, easily streamable, maybe from your home. And I don't know. There's
what if
something
they were able to like auto tune every song to make it mumble rap?
That would be fantastic. I would definitely sign up immediately. I'm going to say something shocking here too, and that is that out of all the streaming services, the one that I actually like the most right now is Pandora. And I find Pandora's ability to actually recommend a song that is similar to the songs that I've said I like is fantastic. Whereas Spotify and everyone else is like,
that's true.
Here is some rap I'm listening to, and then they throw a metal song in the middle of it that, like slow melody. I'm like, what are you doing? This is not what I'm in the mood for.
Spotify is not the best at that. Tidal is the worst at that. But Spotify is like, it's okay, I guess, sometimes. But can you use Pandora for like regular playing music, or is it just the recommendation radio thing like they used to do?
Well, if you pay for it and they give you a student discount, which I appreciate because a lot of streaming services don't. So they have a streaming discount, makes it like $5 a month. But you can play specific songs, but then it wants to take you through tracks of music genres.
So it's trying to do the Pandora radio style thing.
Yeah, radio style. It doesn't want you to just kind of create lists. But I thought I would hate that, and I've actually enjoyed it because I'm discovering new musicians that are actually like the musicians that I'm saying I like, which is unique. But I know we're way off topic, but something like that with Winamp, think about it. If they could establish something that would allow you to create similarities in music and find similar musicians to what you like, something like that would be very useful, because one of the biggest problems with jumping streaming services too is when you jump one, then you have to go reinsert all hundreds of bands that you like again to the new streaming service to kind of teach it the algorithm, right? What if there was a way that Winamp kept that list and then could just like upload it to whatever streaming service? There's ways to make a local media player cool again, I think, but they're going to have to do some pretty innovative things.
So Jill, what would you think they need to do?
Okay. One of my favorite features of Winamp that I spent hours watching was the ability to play Nullsoft streaming video. It was the first streaming platform, and a lot of people did not realize that. There were playlists of hundreds of channels streaming everything from TV shows to independent-made shows, and it was really an early predecessor to YouTube and video podcasts. And I remember tuning in at a certain time every week to watch fan-made Star Trek episodes, and it was just extremely enjoyable and fun, and it was very innovative, and despite the low bandwidth and grainy video streams. And of course, that's one of the reasons a lot of people couldn't participate in it, because they didn't have, they had like a 14.4 baud modem. They didn't have faster internet.
It was really cool because you could watch like all kinds of random things on it, and I didn't get a chance to watch it because my internet wasn't that great. But occasionally I would go like to, school, and the school has like T1 or something at the time. And I'd be able to like load it up and just, play a few things just to like, just to see. And the quality of the video was exactly what you expect it to be.
Yeah. It was
like 240 or if at best.
And it was nice because you could turn off the video and just listen to the audio.
That's really cool.
But it was there. It was, it also used Windows Media Player as well. But they had, developed their own Nullsoft NVS codec that did a fairly good job. And I was fortunate because I had cable modem at that point. I'd already had cable modem in the mid-90s.
You probably ran it specially just for you. No doubt in my mind.
So it really had, it has a history of streaming, and so it can do it. They would be able to tool it to do what Pandora and Spotify does. Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be very cool.
Yeah.
And then open sourcing software like this, Joe, I want to get your thoughts on this. Is this a way, when programs like Winamp, we have all this nostalgia for it, but I started thinking like there's programs out there that we loved back in the day that are no longer here. They're no longer relevant. There's a lot of word processors that come to mind too. in that, and
Yeah.
even some graphical design software and things. But is this a good move for companies to make their products relevant again that may have lost their popularity to open source them
Yeah.
like Winamp has?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, for instance, I wanted to talk about a little bit about the customization in Winamp, and how we have some things, programs here on Linux that allow you to do very similar things already. And one is XMMS. XMS is a media player that's kind of based on Winamp, that came out in November of 1997, and I have been actually using it since then. And it came out just 7 months after Winamp that same year, and because I was already in the world of Linux, I was so excited because now we have basically Winamp for Linux. We have XMS. And it's still my favorite audio player in Linux, and I have, actually, been using it since the beginning. And I actually have a huge collection of mod, S3M, XM, and other tracker music file formats that I listen to from my BBS days. I have thousands of hours of that music, and you could get, God, minimally 20 tracks on a floppy disk. That was just awesome because they're nice and small. I mean, some were only 30 kilobyte, and then you had ones that are 100 kilobyte. And that music format was very prevalent in the bulletin board system days. So for me, Winamp, that was one of the things I used it for.
But what I kind of hear you saying though, Jill, is like, hey, Winamp was my favorite. But
Yeah.
then there's these other ones that came that were kind of like based off of Winamp, like
Yeah.
the XMMS and Audacious.
Yeah.
And because of that, is this too little too late for Winamp to really be open sourcing this?
Yeah. I don't think so.
You're just happy it's open source, aren't you?
I think Jill's
Yeah.
being really nice because, in my opinion, it is too late because Winamp
Little
is
20 minutes.
It's
I'm
been
sorry,
a long
20 years too late.
Yeah, it's been a long time since they were relevant.
Yeah.
But also there's an application called QMMP, and I
Oh,
don't know
yeah.
why all these apps are having weird, like, just random letters. But QMMP, or the Qt or Qt multimedia player, I think that's what it
Yeah.
is actually a really cool thing because it has two modes. One mode is the customized skin mode, and the other one is like a normal regular player. So if you want the regular style player, you can have that, or you can use the skin mode. And they are compatible. The application is compatible with both their own style of skin, plus also Winamp skins, and even XMMS skins.
Yeah.
So you can just use QMP and you get everything that you want. Except for, like, I guess IceCast and Shoutcast, if those still exist. I don't know if that's supported, but
They do still exist. In fact, Winamp, the same creators of Winamp created Shoutcast.
Right.
So,
Nice.
yeah.
So what this tells me then is, like, this is a good option for companies, but don't wait 20 years once your product starts losing relevance to open source it. You could breathe new life in it, but really at this point, it's kind of like giving us Clippy a little bit. It's kind of like, well, we would have never used Clippy. Who are we kidding?
But you know what? I
Winamp
think
would have been
people would.
useful.
How dare you not use Clippy?
I think people would embrace having visualizations again in their media player that Winamp made so popular. There were thousands of them, and they're wonderful. And I've gotten a lot of them over the years to work on XMMS. Sometimes you got to hack them to get them to work. But I like looking at pretty abstract screensavers when I'm watching my music.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that even though it's too little too late in a lot of ways, I think there's somebody in the open source community who, if wanted to take this on, could make it relevant and more relevant than the other media players out there.
So they're not open sourcing it to the sense of, like, releasing the code and everybody can just do whatever they want, right? So it's actually kind of funny because I saw a bunch of articles about this, and I
thought they were.
Yeah, they haven't even told us what license yet they're going to use.
So they're not even doing this. Like, just to be really clear, Winamp is not technically going open source based on the research I've done. And there's a lot of articles saying that it is, but that's using the term open source and opening the source code. Those are different things.
Those are two different
and
things.
It's
Yeah.
one of the things that I can't stand about the term open source is that it's so easily manipulated into you could
True.
marketing manipulation is so easy to do there. And also, by the way, free software is not better. It's actually worse, but that's not important right now. It's that what they're doing is kind of opening, but also kind of not, because every single time they talk about opening the source code, they specifically say that. They don't say open source. They didn't announce which license, like Jill said, but more importantly, it's not even Winamp that is going to be open. They're making a separate project called Free Llama, which is going to act as an open version, but still, again, not open source. But even then, we're still not sure if that will be actually true.
What are we protecting with Winamp at this point? What?
Exactly.
I'm so confused. First of all, I think you should have started with that, Michael, earlier in our conversation. But second of all,
it was having fun with the music, and I just wanted to I think that it's interesting to talk about. It is interesting to talk about can a company breathe life into open source by doing it. It's just not what they're trying to do. But I do think that is a good discussion to have. Yeah, maybe. Who knows? But I think it was still a good reason a good thing to have that conversation, because I do think that is a way to convince companies to make their stuff open source. Because if they want to compete, it makes it easier to compete. But now Winamp is trying to compete in a way that's not. It's kind of not really a thing, because if you go and look at the about page of the announcement or blog or whatever it was, it says Winamp will remain the owner of the software and will decide on the innovations made in the official version. And in order to get access to submit that you have to, or to get access to the code to work on it probably for free, you have to submit interest to them on a form that's not really the open source way. So you have to tell them your information. They contact you and say, here's the code, but it's for not a Winamp thing. It's a different code. And I just think that what they're doing is using the reason I wanted to wait until now is because of the whole open source manipulation of the term, because that's basically what they're doing, in my opinion.
It's interesting. Well, that makes me sad. Maybe they have something they're trying to protect. Maybe there's some licensing or something in there that they own that they get money off of when people make some other version. I don't know. But listen, when I get confused like this, the first thing I do is I go to Microsoft's Bing AI Copilot. And I ask
the first thing I do as well.
Yeah. This AI is our new overlords anyways. So I started thinking, what are some companies that have software out there? And I asked our overlord Bing AI Copilot this question. I said, what are some programs that would benefit from going open source right now, like Winamp? And so I used that as its
Winamp, but
And the first option it gave me was Microsoft Office. So Microsoft's product.
Wow.
Came back and said Microsoft Office. Specifically, it says Microsoft Office is widely used suite of productivity applications.
Sure, that's true.
And it said opening its source code would allow the community to enhance features, improve compatibility, and create alternative versions. I agree, Microsoft. And this is your product.
Yeah, this is your product.
This is your most intelligent platform.
Well, your super awesome AI is telling you that you need to open source your other product. Woo-hoo. And the reason is so that alternatives can be made.
Because they understand, it understands what's running on the back end, and what this AI is running on is Linux.
Yeah.
Yes. So basically, the Linux platform that is powering it, like Jill said, is actually sort of influencing the answer.
Yeah.
Because
it has personality. It understands. It loves open source because I was created with open source.
I love that Microsoft also is in the news for extensive, sizable layoffs tech layoffs in 2024, all under the guise of because AI is going to replace so many jobs, and their own tool is no, open source Microsoft Office.
See, what we're trying to say here is that AI is nowhere near what people are claiming it to be. And Bing AI is definitely not even in the running to compete at all.
Yeah.
And it also recommends Adobe Photoshop, AutoCAD, SolidWorks, MATLAB, QuickBooks, Oracle Database, VMware, Autodesk Maya, and SAP ERP. So I agree with all those,
Sure. And also none of them would do it. And there's really no incentive at all for them to do it, but whatever.
Well, the incentive is the community would fork it and create a better version of it. and then they'd stop making money.
I don't think you understand the word incentive.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
That's there would be a benefit as there would be improvements for sure.
Yeah.
So like there'd be there'd be an incentive for the overall global society of computer users.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of ways that I think this could be a good thing. First of all, Microsoft Office should be on Linux, whether they open source it or not. It should be available on Linux, the full application, not just the online version, which is very limited in comparison.
Make a Snap or a Flatpak, people. Come on.
There you go. Yeah, that would be.
You've already admitted that Linux is better by introducing Linux into Windows to do things that Windows can't do. You've already admitted that the majority of your Azure platform is powered by Linux. So you have adopted the fact that Linux is better. Now it's time to bring open source, the open source platform of Linux, the ability to use your Office tools. Because, a lot of people who don't move to Linux, one of the reasons, like this is very frequently said, is that they need to use Microsoft Office. You put it on Mac. Mac and Linux are very similar, kind of like cousins.
Let's put it on
or whatever.
Our biggest competitor's platform, but not the one that we're using to help our business grow.
Yeah, not the one that would probably help us, Ridiculous, Microsoft.
Ridiculous.
Do
Microsoft.
Better.
Your AI is stupid. Better. Anyways, so moving on. And we're gonna stay on the subject of
now. Let's talk about Microsoft and talk about Microsoft.
This is why you're gonna want to keep using Windows, Michael. You're gonna eat your words and be like, you know what? I'm giving up on Linux. I'm going over to the other podcast studio to talk about Windows.
The one next door.
Yeah, the one next door.
Windows.
Yeah.
Yeah. Destination
One day I want to make that parody podcast.
Please no.
I just want to see how many people are like really fans of Windows. Is there fans of Windows and would they listen? They're like 10 people.
I think there are Windows podcasts. I don't know if they're actually viable. Oh yeah.
There's a Windows podcast?
Yeah.
Wow. This week in Windows.
No, I think there's a Windows Weekly or something like that.
Yeah.
This Week in Windows. Oh man. All right.
I did make an episode of This Week in Linux as This Week in Windows where I did an April Fool's thing.
Yeah.
That would be funny, actually. That'd be a good one.
Well, it's funny because the episode actually landed on April Fool's. So I was like, I have to.
Yeah.
So, that's years
ago. Windows is doing
Central.
something to really bring everyone together to love Windows some more. They are bringing back bringing in ads directly into your paid operating system.
Good job, Microsoft.
So if you all remember Net Zero, and Net Zero was a time we were all doing dial-up. You had choices between AOL, like Mind something. There was
Mindspace,
Mindscape, something.
Mindscape. I think it was Mindscape.
Yeah.
Mindspring.
Mindspring. That's it. Mindspring.
Yeah.
And then you had Net Zero. And a lot of people went to Net Zero because it was free, but you had this little box in the corner that gave you a bunch of ads. And so it would serve you ads, but you got to dial up for free. You didn't have to pay the $14.99 a month. So Net Zero was kind of dope for that reason. You're like, man, I don't have to pay the subscription fee for this. And so Microsoft is like looking back in time, figuring out how do we monetize Windows even more? Net Zero. That's what I think happened. They asked AI.
They saw that Amazon was getting away with adding ads to a platform that wasn't supposed to have ads with Prime Video.
Yeah.
Now
it's now the thing. So Windows has decided they're going to get ads and make Mac OS and Linux look that much more appealing to anyone jumping. So that means when you hit your start menu button, what's going to happen is you may be served ads right there instead of seeing the application that you need to get to or the document that you need to open really quickly.
But what if you pin something to the start menu?
Yeah.
You still get ads?
You get ads. Yeah. Lots of
Does it seem like a
ads.
great experience, in my opinion?
Yeah. And so I really appreciate this, actually, Microsoft. I think that you're doing us a favor and helping people learn about Linux through this kind of stupidity. Or Mac OS, honestly, until Mac starts doing it. But
I think I don't know if Mac's going to do it because they haven't done a lot of other silly things that Microsoft's tried to do, but because they've done other nonsense themselves. But I think that this is fantastic. I agree that they're helping Linux, and I just hope the Linux community can take advantage of this particular situation, unlike the previous times. But I think this is actually, we're at a position where the Linux ecosystem is ready to go. Like the last time when we tested a Fedora 40 and Ubuntu 2404, I mean, it like the Ubuntu experience was like, I think we pretty much are there at this point. So I think there's a potential that this time Thanks, Microsoft.
Well, this is how cool our community is. So there's a program now called Oh Freak Go Back. Oh Frick Go Back. So OFGB for short. And it was made by someone named Maddie. And Maddie is primarily a Linux user as a developer, but sometimes has to use Windows and wanted to do something about this annoying ad pop-up thing that Windows is doing. So they made this tool, which is a GUI that allows you to disable them without having to go into the registry or be an expert of any kind to figure this stuff out. But the best part is why Maddie did this. I quoted as saying, "I think the most important thing the tool has done is getting people to talk about ads in their place in paid software like Windows." And I just love that. I love the insightfulness, the thoughtfulness. It's great to make a tool like that, but I love the thought of like, we're going to get the discussion going. And that's what we're going to help do here as well, Maddie, is get the discussion going of just, this is ridiculous. This is not a free program. You don't get Windows for free. You can't just go download the latest version. You pay hundreds of dollars for these licenses. And then they want to take over your start menu with ads on top of it. It's just completely ridiculous that they're doing this. It pisses me off, honestly. And people will let them get away with it, unfortunately.
Well, I mean, a lot of people feel like there is no other option. And that's why Destination Linux exists. So you can share this with the people you know who think that there are no other options. Because there are.
There you go.
Yeah. And my first thought was, it takes a Linux developer to fix Windows.
I mean, obviously, Microsoft is not going to use their own developers to remove the ads, so I get that part. But it is hilarious that there are things like this that Maddie made, fantastic, by the way. But also there's things like PC Decrapifier. Like that's a real tool, and that's hilarious that exists. And there's so many other things that's wrong with Windows that.
Whoa! Hold that thought, Michael. Hold that thought. Oh. Now, I know we were kind of crapping on Microsoft Windows a little bit. In this show, listen, we get it if people have to use Windows. We're not anti-Microsoft everything.
Of course. We're anti Windows being heavily with ads, telemetry, being super annoying, tracking everything you do, those sorts of things. But if you have to use it for your work, it's not like we're not going to judge a person using it, obviously.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. Microsoft is about to blow your mind with AI. Now, their own AI kind of fought against them. It turned into like a T1000 and told them to open source Office, right? But now they're going to use their AI for something good. So when I first started working on the earlier segment, talking about the ads in Windows, because I thought it was really interesting, the work that Maddie did and things there, I came across another article that came about around Tuesday this week that Microsoft has added another obnoxious feature for you to love. This one is amazing. Let me just read you what they're calling this amazing feature here. It's at a Build conference event on Monday. Microsoft revealed a new AI power feature called Recall for Copilot PCs that will allow Windows 11 users to search and retrieve their past activities on their PC to make it work. Recall records everything users do on their PC, including activities and apps, communications and live meetings, and websites visited for the research. Yes, this includes passwords, server keys, messages that you're sending to people. It does not blank them out. It does not stop that. It records exactly, literally everything that you do on your PC. Who doesn't want that? I mean, who doesn't want that? A monster? A dum-dum head?
A dum-dum head? Yes.
Yeah.
So this is hilarious because a lot of people have wanting to get rid of the telemetry that Microsoft is collecting from them. And it's like, it's still over the top of like what apps are using, that sort of stuff. But the nerve to have
recording your desktop.
We have had conversations in the past on this show about how Microsoft, whether or not they've changed, and now we know they have not changed. This is stupid. Because there are so many things that back in the day, Microsoft was doing stuff against their own users. This is probably the worst thing they have ever done. Literally recording everything you do on your computer. That is not only unacceptable, that is an insult to the concept of privacy. I can't even fathom what the pitch meeting inside the boardroom was like, okay, hey, what we're going to do here is we're going to add a feature where it allows everyone to be able to go back and see anything they've done. Well, how do we do that? Record everything they do. Genius.
What we do is we run OBS in the background. We click record desktop. Then we run some AI against it and help siphon out some of the stuff. Like their idea is now Mac has a feature called Time Shift. Now Time Shift is really cool. It takes a snapshot.
Yeah, it's like
a backup service of various portions of your work schedule. You can set it for hours or days that it takes snapshots. And then you can go back in time to it. So in case you overwrote a file you needed or something else and grab that file and pull it back to the current timeline. That would be a really cool kind of use case for backup. And they are stating that the snapshots are encrypted and saved on your local PC's hard drive for now. But again, this is the same company now serving you ads on your paid software and has known to be continuously looking for more and more telemetry. And I'm sure there's probably some kind of reading of stuff that they're going to do in the background to make sure their service is as good as possible and create new features for you in the future. Type of wording.
Well, I mean, the quote says the snapshots are encrypted and saved on your PC's hard drive. It doesn't say anything about also made copies on their stuff. At no point do they don't deny that it's not going to their stuff, So it could be, yes, it is encrypted and it is on your hard drive, but it's also decryptable by us and on our drive.
Because Microsoft has slowly replaced your file folders with OneDrive. So now, for instance, when I log into a Windows machine,
if you just put it on your drive in OneDrive,
the very first documents and pictures and everything it shows, and it doesn't say it explicitly, is OneDrive's documents and pictures. And then underneath that, if you search by C: and stuff, you can get to your local folder. But by default, it saves everything in OneDrive. So all that stuff is sitting likely on Microsoft servers, and they know that. So this idea of it being like a safety feature, or safe because it's encrypted or local on your drive, is one thing. But also, have you ever heard of a computer being hacked? And now, instead of the hacker having to really do any work at all to kind of figure out
Microsoft everything to them.
Yeah, you just remote into somebody's computer and you can see everything that person has done, every person they talk to. You could download their contacts list. You could download all their messages. I mean, everything. Microsoft has made it so much more convenient for hackers. And I know the hackers are out there like, thank you, Microsoft. You know what? You're looking out for us, man. Appreciate it.
They need to recall this feature.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's dumb. And I also see businesses utilizing this against their workforce. Imagine now your boss decides, you know what? I need to get rid of Michael. I want a lower paid resource now in this position. He's been doing really good work, but let me go back on his PC for the last several weeks and look for any point in time where Michael wasn't as productive as he should have been. And he'll have every snapshot of everything you ever did on your machine to see when that one time you went and decided to look at, a YouTube video or something. Like it's going to be used.
Or my daily break of HelloKitty.com.
Yeah, Hello Kitty. Who doesn't do a daily break of Hello Kitty? If you got fired for that, how dare they?
I know, right?
We all need a little Hello Kitty in our lives.
Yeah, exactly.
This is going to be used for all of the worst ways. There's nothing. What is a good feature of this? Maybe because you're like, oh, I saw that cool website earlier. Now I can't remember it. You can just
literally in your browser history. like there's like everything you could possibly come up with. In my opinion, there are ways to already do it, and the only thing would be like
a Git repository for code, for instance, if you needed a prior version. Like there's always, like you said, there's solutions for all of that.
There's always a solution for these things, but it's kind of like there are some people who don't know that clipboard managers exist. So they copy something and they're like, oh, I could go back and get that thing. But you could just also install a clipboard manager. And what's hilarious is that Windows 11 and I think 10 has a built-in clipboard manager that is not on by default. You have to turn it on. So, and it's also super limited. It's not very good, but you can technically do it. And then that kind of defeats the whole, oh, I lost all the text I'm doing. The only thing I could think of is like if you're writing an email, but depending on your client, it automatically does a save for the drafts and stuff these days. So like, I mean, there's very little justification for this whatsoever.
Yeah. And you get accused of a criminal case, your computer gets confiscated. Maybe what you were doing while they're arresting you or seizing your stuff, nothing to do with that, but they can look through all of your history of all time on your computer till they find something. I mean, this just seems redonkulous, like stupid
So
idea.
horrible.
I've literally seen nobody on social media think, "Oh, that's powerful. I can't wait." I've not seen single one. Like,
No.
nobody gets it except
I think there's going to be a lot of
Microsoft.
people who I think there are genuinely. You're saying that Microsoft and hackers are the most people who are excited. I think that's
hackers
true,
are
but
excited. My bad.
there's also one other category: the people who purchase data and use it to send you ads. I think they are super excited.
Marketers will love it. You're right. There's three groups of people.
Not just marketers. I mean, trash people who are technically
data.
marketers.
What do they call them?
Not data hoarding.
Brokers, data brokers.
Data brokers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a term that's also in itself a disgusting concept. You know?
Yeah. Well, that's the world we're in. Hey, Jill, I'm done with Microsoft. Take us into something happier here in the gaming world.
Yeah. So, do you dream of getting off this planet? I wonder who wrote that. Here we go
especially
again,
now.
Ryan.
Now, after that conversation, 100% I do.
Yes. So it was apropos after that last topic. So we'd like to get off this planet as well. But what if the planet isn't greener on the other side? Our great game this week is Voyager 19, which is a space based horror game. The game on Steam describes itself like this. With the invention of hibernation technologies, it is now possible for humans to travel to the stars. However, the Magella Science Expedition, the first manned mission to other star systems, has been declared missing after failing to establish communications. You have been chosen to captain the hastily designed Voyager 19 space probe, a rudimentary spacecraft equipped with a hibernation pod and fractional light speed capable engines to search for the missing science mission. This is cool. So
Exciting.
Voyager 19, it's actually definitely an easy to use, like menu driven game, but with great atmosphere and good sound effects that gives it a really spooky feel. I actually enjoyed it. I played it for the first hour.
Horror game.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's more of
Another
a
character she hates. I love it.
yeah, it has a definitely creepiness about it, and I think part of that is just the isolation.
Yeah,
You know?
that doesn't sound creepy to me at all.
Yeah. So you can actually explore different star systems and navigate with an old school star map, which is really cool. You can take pictures of planets and record their radio waves and manage what systems get powered as your nuclear battery decays. And it's all done in like old school kind of CRT. The photographs are very have lots of lines
That's
in them.
cool.
And, yeah.
I get that there's like an imminent doom factor with your nuclear battery decaying and the horror game and the isolation. And I still choose, if there's an option, to take my chances out in space and not stay on this planet. Just putting that out there. I mean, it cannot be any worse than dealing with these pen chewers on Earth. So
yes.
I'm
these pen chewers, aka Microsoft.
Yes.
Microsoft. Yeah. Pen chewers.
And this game supports our Linux penguins out of the box, which is really awesome.
That's what I like. I like
Voyager
to hear
19.
That.
It's a lot of fun.
It sounds fun. Michael, you gonna get off this planet given the choice?
At this point, I mean, maybe the whole going towards a doomed mission, maybe not that part, but otherwise, like some of these games are.
I mean, aren't we going towards a doomed mission here on Earth?
You make a valid point, sir.
Sorry, we'll move on.
So in this case,
let's go to Happy again.
Okay, so, Happy, Jill. Bring it back.
Our software spotlight this week is a very handy tool called
like how we the first thing we went to Happy is a horror game.
Yeah, I guess it was, but it was in space and it gets you off this planet.
Get you off this planet. That's Happy.
Yeah.
That's all we did. Okay, gotcha. All right, what is it, Jill?
So this handy tool is called Text Pieces. This is a developer's scratchpad tool that lets you do things like calculate hashtags, encode text, remove trailing spaces and lines, format JSON and XML, escape and unescape strings, convert JSON to YAML and vice versa, and filter lines and all other cool quick techniques to
Shut up,
make
Michael.
your
I know what you're
coding
gonna say.
easier.
Don't say it, Michael. Don't mention that tool you're thinking of right now is proprietary. It's not open source, so do not say it. This is different.
Was not
this
going
is open
to say
source.
anything.
Yeah, we know.
Honestly, I was not going to say anything. But
Okay.
now that you have prompted it, you can do this stuff in Sublime.
Michael,
Yes,
dang it.
you
Gosh,
can.
dang it, Michael.
And some of it you can do in Vi as well, or Vim.
Yes. But this is a nice GUI tool that you can exit, unlike
This
Vi
is
and
cool
Vim.
to be able to do a lot of stuff, like getting rid of things that you don't need, like the trailing spaces and the trailing lines. That's a nice thing to just kind of clean out a document. And I like that.
It is really nice, and it, it has very powerful and time efficient tools if you're finding yourself needing to do things like removing those unnecessary spaces from a CSS file. That's something that I think a lot of us have had to do, and convert tabs to spaces and replace a substring. So those
First
are
of all, why would you replace tabs with spaces? Tab is the correct way to do it. You don't use spaces, people.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Yeah.
Or you like to be like me to mess with people. Like I've said this to anytime I have a conversation with developers, and like it's tab versus spaces, and then we have like this debate, and then I tell them, well, what I like to do is hit tab that inserts spaces, and they're like, one of the responses was like, "You're dead to me."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this application called Text Pieces is available as a handy flat pack over at flathub.org.
Yeah, so Spazzy in our patron room says 5 spaces equals just 1 tab. When you're talking about efficient, tab is far superior.
Isn't it 4 spaces?
5 times. I think it's 4. But you have to hit spacebar 5 times or 4 times versus 1 tab button. I mean,
well, that's the whole tab that insert spaces thing. You get all the spaces and you get to use just tab. I mean, come on, think about it. There's
there's
going to be a lot of people who are like
thinking about it.
I think there's going to be more debate about that than other stuff in the show. But this is pretty cool. I will say, like when I was talking about the Sublime thing, I only said it because you prompted it, Yeah. But I also will say that this is a cooler approach because Sublime is fantastic. It is super powerful. It can do so many cool things, and it is probably the least intuitive editor ever.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, most of them are not very intuitive. Okay, it's not the least because Emacs and Vim exist, but it's the least of those kinds.
Yeah.
Without being the terminal based.
Well, I like that it's free forever and that it runs on Linux, but it does, prompt you every 3 or 4 saves or something, or 10 saves to buy
every 100
license. Yeah. So, I mean, it's a pretty flexible licensing setup that they have for a proprietary piece of software. But Michael, it's time for the tip of the week. Give us the tip of the week.
The tip of the week is just like Microsoft, everyone wants your data.
You can't have it.
Well, what about if you go to a grocery store and they have ice cream and then they ask you for your data to get like some kind of membership system
or discount, right? They're like,
it's
discount 2 for
card.
1, but only if you use our special discount card.
Yeah. Yes. You know what you could do?
What?
Don't participate in that system.
Okay. Thank goodness you had a better option than steal, because that was where my mind was going.
I mean, well, just pay for the thing like a normal price, Like that's just.
Oh, okay. That's an option too. Yeah. Okay.
I like how your first reaction, steal it. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
So
I'm glad we clarified that.
But you can kind of cheat the system in this case because there are some numbers you can use. I will try to find some because I saw this somewhere. I don't remember where, but I'll see if I can find it. But there's like these numbers you can use, like numbers that are put in phone and like songs. Like 8675309 is like the most, like a very
when they
common
ask you
thing.
For your loyalty number.
Yeah. When they ask you for your loyalty number, it's always a phone number. And you could just put that number in, or you put any area code plus that number. And those numbers don't actually exist because they're effectively banned by all phone line companies. And you could put that into a thing. And so So I would say
you're kind of open sourcing, pooling people together to get the discounts. Because if everybody's using that number,
what's cool about the idea, if you use this method, is that if other people are using it too, then you can get a discount based on all the usage that they're using, and which in that case means it's like a lot of discounts. So that'd be pretty cool, and that's a way to do it. You could also do something that is like a reverse, where you confuse them and give them a bunch of useless data.
Yeah.
Like for example, you could sign up for, like gibberish jargon and just put in a fake number. Now, of course,
the problem is they're tying that to your credit card still. They'll have your real name on your credit card and stuff. So I feel like the gibberish thing is an interesting one, and I do recommend it if you do have to sign up for one, but they're still going to be able to probably put it together if they're smart enough.
Okay, maybe don't do it at Costco.
Use cash. How about that? That's a tip. Use cash, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, cash. Use cash.
Yeah, use cash.
Oh, but okay, there is that, but also the fact that I don't want to carry cash. There's like, what about those? I mean, because it requires me to carry and keep up with it, and I have to go to the ATM to get the cash out. Card. Yeah, but I don't have to go to the ATM every day to get the cash out or whatever.
Oh man, see, this is the problem: the convenience. Over privacy.
But also, if they're going to get your data anyway, except for unless you use cash. If you use cash, they will not get any data whatsoever. So you
sign up for the crappy fake name stuff is what I'm saying, and you give them the gibberish, or you use the number like you said, and then you pay in cash, and now they can't tie the two together. They just think George Washington is the one who.
That's a good way to do it.
I like it. I like it.
I actually like how a lot of the old school mom and pop shops do it. They just give you a card, and every time you come and you buy something, they put a little stamp on it. And by the 10th one, they give you a free one. And so there's, me and my husband have a couple businesses around here that we do that with. Like the car wash. The car wash does that. Our 10th car wash is free,
Yeah.
But they're not collecting your data. They're just stamping how many times you've been there. And, it's nice.
I mean, that's a good method. I think that's better, obviously. But also for another tip for people who are, asked to sign up for stuff, you can just say no. First of all, there's times where I've gone to the stores and they said they would go like, "Hey, what's your number for?" At the grocery store or something, and they say, "What's your phone number?" Like, no. Or I went to Ryan and I went to Micro Center. Was that what asked us?
Yeah,
I think
Micro Center.
We were going to buy, I forgot what kind of. It was the first time I ever been to Micro Center in the first place, by the way. But I also needed to buy something, and then we check out, and they're like, "What's your phone number?" Like, no, just not. I didn't even have a conversation with them. I was just like, no, not doing that.
There's literally no incentive from those stores. Otherwise, they'll say they'll send you coupons and stuff, but you can look them up online and things. So, refusing is definitely a good option. But what about places like Costco, Michael, where they require you to have a photo ID and a membership card to even get it? A lot of people love shopping at Costco.
That is true. And some people I'm not going to say my use case is the same for everybody. Obviously, if you have a big family and you got to buy a lot of stuff, so you're going to buy a lot in bulk, then you can do that. But I don't need that. And I don't use Costco. So my opinion is Costco, cost no.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Or you can shop at places like Smart and Final. We have Smart and Final here where you can
never
buy,
heard of that.
A bulk. I think it's just here, West Coast, California.
That's a bummer.
Yeah.
You can also just make up some fake information like fake birthdays and stuff. Anytime, actually, it doesn't even matter if anyone, unless it's like a government document where I have to be real with my birthday, I always use a fake birthday. Always.
Yeah, same. So, Costco does...
which also means that people send me things on Facebook like "Happy Birthday" on the wrong day.
Yeah,
they tie your data together in Costco, and they are selling your data. Although when you go to the privacy rights page for Costco, it says Costco does not knowingly sell or share information relating to individuals under age 16. So that's an important caveat there. But if you're
just that one part about under age 16.
Yeah.
Can you even sign up for a Costco membership if you're not 18 or older?
I don't think so. I don't know. We'll have to look into that.
That'd be kind of interesting.
I won't look into it because I really don't care. I don't have a Costco membership. But But they do collect things like contact information, photograph and digital image, identification information, demographic information, feedback or response information, content and files, chat features, transaction purchase information, identifiers and device information, geolocation, guest wireless access, the duration of your connection, and the log of your activity while you're on their guest Wi-Fi, usage and session information, call recordings and chat transcripts, video and other images, and automated license plate readers. Just to name a few at Costco. So you're paying for that membership to get that discount. And they're also double dipping on your data. Naughty, naughty, Costco. Naughty, naughty. That's just because a lot of people love Costco. They kind of look at them like the heroes of retail a little bit, because they pay a little better. They've got some good benefits for the employees, which I appreciate. But
Well, they can afford to pay when they get all your data and sell it.
Yeah, there's a reason they want that membership card, and it's not just to give you a discount.
The first time I saw a Costco thing, and it was like this big thing about like you could save so much money. I was like, okay, cool. And I went to Costco, and they said, all right, we're gonna need you to get your photo ID. We're gonna take a photo of you so you can have this Costco. I was like, nope, never mind, and I just left. This was many years ago. Not because it was I'm not a tinfoil hat person, just to be clear. But in this case, it was like, why do you need to have a photo of me and to have see my driver's license to buy food?
It's a membership, Michael.
Nah. I was like, nah, that's so ridiculous to me. I was like, I'm not even gonna consider this. See ya.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's other options. Aldi. A lot of people like Aldi.
Yeah, there's other options for getting your food out there. In Texas, we have HEB, which is the best, man. HEB is the best grocery store.
Never heard.
Anyways. So a big thank you to each and every one of you for supporting us by watching or listening to Destination Linux. However you do it, we love your faces. You can come join us in the discussion, whether it's discussion we had about Microsoft's AI or Microsoft's ads or Winamp or any of the cool things we discussed.
Microsoft's recall nightmare.
Yeah.
or wanting to get off the planet.
Yes.
Any of these things.
All that discussion's there too. And if you want to watch us live, you can become a patron of Destination Linux and help keep this show going on the road. Patrons keep the show alive. If you're a patron, you help keep the show alive. If you're just listening, we appreciate it. But patrons are the ones that keep this show going year after year after year. So huge thanks and shout out to our patrons of Destination Linux.
Yes. You're helping us by just listening to helping us make this show possible. But also, patrons are helping a little bit more.
A little bit.
But anyway, seriously though, if you want to watch us live, you can join our patron section of our Discord server. So go to tuxdigital.com/Discord to get into the Discord server to have all these conversations. And if you become a patron by going to tuxdigital.com/membership, you will, if you set it up on Patreon properly, it will automatically make you a patron inside of the Discord server so you can have access to join us live. And then at the end of each show, we have our patron-only post show where we hang out every week with the patrons who come watch us live. So you could do that if you want by going to tuxdigital.com/membership. Also, if you'd like to support the show, you can get our swag or merch at tuxdigital.com/store. We have a lot of cool stuff like t-shirts, hoodies, mugs, and so much more at tuxdigital.com/store. Especially our new Retro Vibes Destination Linux collection. Check that out. And there's going to be new versions of that being added soon.
Yay. And make sure to check out all the awesome shows here on Tux Digital. That's right. We have an entire network of shows to fill your whole week with wonderful geeky goodness. Check out Linux Out Loud with Matt, Nate, and Wendy having a blast and sharing their passion for Linux and open source. And everyone head to tuxdigital.com and subscribe to all our great shows. And don't forget to leave a rating on your favorite app so others can discover the power of open source and keep those penguins marching in the full Monty of Linux and open source awesome sauce.
Hold on, Jill.
Everybody.
Hold on. Jill, hold on.
What?
Did you hear that Pseudo Show is coming back? The Pseudo Show.
Yeah,
everyone's
it's back.
favorite show is back.
It's back.
It's a big deal. Back. We got to discuss that. Yeah. We got to mention that.
Yeah.
Exactly. I just did, but we got to mention it.
Yeah.
The
pseudo.show, people.
Yes.
So we've got Brandon, Bill, and Neil. It's great.
Yep. They're back in full effect. There's a new episode out right now, episode 67. and it's about open source and how the open source software in the enterprise is transforming at this point. So go check that out. We'll have a link in the show notes if you'd like to take a listen to it. And also, if you want to watch it, because there's a video version of Pseudo Show now.
Yes.
That's right. So it's not only is it back, it's also now video based too. So we'll have all that stuff in the show notes. And here's another thing before we move on, or before we end the show, I wanted to also point out, we talk about Linux Out Loud, and that has Wendy on it, who is also the editor for Destination Linux. And I just want to say how such a good job she does, but also the drool meter. We have to bring some respect to that, because the drool meter was so good. I mean, it was so ridiculous to Ryan to bring that up and try to create that sort of, but it also turned out so well thanks to Wendy and her editing.
I didn't think when I was taunting Wendy in that episode that she was really going to take the time to like make my face look ridiculous and put the drool meter and track it and do all of that stuff. But she did. And mad respect, Wendy. I'll never mess with you again. So
yeah,
I like how
you can notice. If you'll notice, since we've had that episode, Ryan has not done that.
I've shut my mouth about Wendy. Yeah.
And Wendy, I like how also you put the donkey/mule face on over Ryan's head.
Yeah. Well done, Wendy. If you have not seen that episode, you need to go back and watch the amazing editing that Wendy does, because she is the greatest editor of all time and one of my favorite people to walk the face of the planet. And that's just one of the few things that come to mind when I think of Wendy out there.
Yeah. Aw. And everybody, have a great week. And remember that the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Yes.
We love
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Most of you.
We'll see you next week, everybody.